Customers have become increasingly demanding in what they expect from their products. A change in supply chain strategy is needed. And hence I'll be talking today with Hein on consumer product supply chains. Hein, welcome.
Thank you.
This environment of supply chains for consumer products is changing. What are the most important changes that we see?
If you're asking for the overarching trends that impact the entire industry and are especially relevant for supply chain, I would say there are three main things that I'm focusing on at the moment. Mm-hmm. Firstly, it's personalization of products. We know consumers love to customize their products. We've known it for years in fashion and apparel. Mm-hmm. People design their own running shoes and design their own jeans and bags. Right. But nowadays that's spread across all of the other segments, and people are customizing their breakfast cereal and designing their own organic shampoos. The second major thing is what I call the continuing shift in route to market. Mm-hmm. And we all know how important direct to consumer is sure. For consumer products companies. With that, the whole theme around last mile delivery and all of the expectations that go with that from consumers are now becoming also themes for consumer products companies. Right. Traditionally, this has been a domain where retail focuses on. So, and the third one would be the technology advances that enable consumers to have a one-on-one relation with the brands that they love. Of course, consumers already interact with brands and leave product reviews on the internet. Sure. But now we're getting into a whole new dimension with voice commerce, and also VR is taking off because furniture you can already test. Right. You know how furniture fits in your home, but also cosmetics and hair care. You can sort of test products before you actually purchase them.
Right, and that must have quite an impact on supply chains, whom have traditionally been quite linear in their approach, haven't they?
Absolutely, and next to being linear, they have been designed to be very efficient. So they're very good at shipping large volumes of pretty much similar products into the retail channel. Right. And now we're entering this world that I call the world of one, where you need to plan, make, and deliver one single product and deliver that to one specific consumer. Right. And supply chains in consumer products are not set up to deal with that level of granularity.
And so what is the solution to solve this granular issue?
The main thing is that we leave the linear thinking in supply chain behind.
Sure.
And because it does not represent the reality anymore. I mean, the reality is much closer to a network. Think of it as an ecosystem of companies that design and produce and deliver products. Mm-hmm. And it's a network. With it in the center, you have the consumer, and that's very important. The consumer dictates how she or he interacts with that network, mm-hmm. and the network in return then responds in the most optimal way. Now, the benefit is that such a network can sort of cover a very broad range of customer requirements. Mm-hmm. It can very flexibly respond to changes. But I think more important is that such a network creates the opportunity to bring a whole new spectrum of services and even business models to the market. And the great thing is that instead of designing supply chains to optimize cost and service, which we traditionally do, sure. We get into a discussion about how can supply chains enable new business models, which is a completely new strategic discussion to have in supply chains.
Basically, the shift is from a linear thinking model away from that model towards an ecosystem-based model. But I can imagine if I walk into a retail store, if I shop online, we're still far from the truth. So what kind of building blocks, if you will, are needed for that transition?
We're not talking about your average supply chain improvement project. Right. Here. This is really a sort of a transformational thing. It touches every aspect of a supply chain operating model. So it's about people and skills, organization, mm-hmm. data. If I need to highlight a couple of sort of building blocks in that transition, I would take out, first of all, data. I mean, the network needs to be able to collect data, sure. but also to freely share it across the network. And that's not trivial. It's very hard to establish that. Also, the data need to be translated, obviously, into value for the supply chain. Mm-hmm. A second building block would be automation. I mean, supply chains need to be far more automated than they currently are to deal with the level of complexity.
Sure.
This is true in execution, so warehouse mechanization, for example, but it's also true for decision making. Decisions in supply chains need to be automated in order to respond quickly to demand in the market. We see a very important role for control towers, a topic that you
discussed
know of,
previously, definitely.
and control towers are traditionally set up to increase visibility, but now they need to expand their scope to cover the full network, and also become much more intelligent almost. They need to help in making decisions to optimize the product flow through the network. I would say a final important building block would be planning, because planning needs to become continuous. At the moment, we're always planning in weekly and monthly cycles, but that does not give the responsiveness that is needed for companies to deal with consumers directly. Consumers want to have a much faster response. An important final dimension, I think, to address is the people dimension, because when supply chains evolve into intelligent supply networks, the people need to be much more focused on collaborating with other entities in the network, and they need to be focused on how do we create more value for our consumers.
So Hein, people, data, automation and planning. That's what the building blocks that we need for the transformation. Well, what's next?
Yeah, it's a little bit like with self-driving cars, right? We know what the vision is, we know where we have to land,
right.
But now it's about creating a roadmap that gets us there. So that would be the first step, and then start acting and rolling out the first initiatives.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.